Welcome to the Veterinary Rehabilitation Podcast, where we aim to help fellow veterinary rehab therapists increase their knowledge and elevate their practice. I'm Megan Kelly.
And I'm Lloyd. Together, we bring you the latest insights, research, and information in the field of veterinary rehabilitation.
This podcast is brought to you by Onlinepethealth, a leading continuing education membership for veterinary rehabilitation therapists. With Onlinepethealth, you will have access to a wide range of online resources to help you stay up to date with the latest techniques, advances, and trends in the industry.
Our podcast features in-depth conversations with leading experts in veterinary rehabilitation. They share their own experiences and knowledge to help you improve your practice. Whether you're a seasoned pro or just starting out in the field, our goal is to provide you with the tools and the insights you need to succeed.
So join us as we explore the exciting world of veterinary rehabilitation and help you take your practice to the next level. Hey vet rehabbers, this episode was inspired by Anae's curiosity and desire to better understand the science behind pulsed electromagnetic field therapy, also known as PEMF. Now, in this conversation, Anae and I take a deep dive into the current research on PEMF. We unpack the key treatment parameters used in studies, discuss why comparing research findings can be so challenging, and explore some of the limitations that makes it difficult to draw clear conclusions across different devices and protocols. Together, we examine what the evidence currently tells us, where the gaps in our knowledge still exist, and how clinicians can interpret the available research when making decisions in practice. Most importantly, we focus on the practical application of PEMF in veterinary rehabilitation clinics and how therapists can use the evidence we do have to guide treatment choices. Whether you're already using PEMF or simply want to better understand the science behind this popular modality, this episode will help you navigate the research and apply it more confidently in clinical practice. Now, if you're not a member already, our amazing online community of vet rehabbers from all over the world gathers in our Facebook groups. So if you haven't joined, you can head over to Facebook and request to be a part of the action. Our groups include small animal vet rehabbers, equine vet rehabbers, hydro vet rehabbers, and our business vet rehabbers. That's the one for those juggling patient care and running your own practices. Now, in all the groups, we regularly share tips, advice, and host live sessions with experts to support you on your vet rehab journey. A quick word from our sponsors. Support, prevent, and rehabilitate. That's the Paw Prosper way. We've built a portfolio of industry-leading brands like Walking Pets, Help 'em Up, Respond Animal Therapeutics, Fit Paws, and Blue Nine to give your patients the gold standard in care. And we have some big news. Paw Prosper is officially the new home of the Canine Rehabilitation Institute and Onlinepethealth. We're bringing the best products and the best online education together under one roof to help you and your patients thrive. So as a special hello to the Onlinepethealth community, we're offering a one-time gift with your next order when you sign up today. Head over to pawprosper.com/OPH and join the movement in pet rehabilitation. Right, over to my chat with Anae. Hey Anae, thanks for joining me.
Hey Meg, it's good to be here.
Today, Anae and I are going to do like a deep dive into PEMF therapy. This has been a long time coming. We've done loads of research, especially Anae. Anae, I'm super excited to chat about this topic. Do you want to start off by sharing exactly what PEMF therapy is?
Yes. Okay, so first I want to say that this is just like an area of special interest for me that I've been doing a lot of research on lately, but I definitely don't feel like I have a handle on all of it. There are so many research articles on this specific question. So I want to share what I found and what I've learned and what has been really interesting to me. But just as a disclaimer, I'm not even an electrotherapies person. I always struggle to understand the science behind the electrical components of the electrotherapies. So just as a caveat before we dive into it, but I think that my perspective will help others who feel the same way as me. I'm definitely not alone in this world of veterinary rehabilitation as not an electrotherapies person. Okay, so PEMF is pulsed electromagnetic field therapy. It's thought to influence cellular signaling, ion movement, circulation, pain modulation, like the list of things that it's supposed to influence or to treat or to work on is quite long and very vague and broad. And so I think that firstly, we don't have a clear understanding of the mechanism of action of PEMF. And the more I read, the more I think that is because it is actually really broad. The device itself, or the way that you can apply PEMF with different parameters, is very, very broad. And so it could influence all of those things, but depending on the parameters that are being used. So that is really what I think we should look at more in the next phase of research and development of these devices, is understanding the parameters. And so if we're thinking about those parameters, we're essentially thinking about the frequency, the intensity of the magnetic field that's created, and the waveform or the signal type of the device, right? One of the first articles that I found that massively, massively helped me is by Gaynor et al., Veterinary Applications of Pulsed Electromagnetic Field Therapy, and that was published in 2018. And I specifically want to talk about this one because the way that they describe the history and then the development of the devices is extremely helpful. They talk about categorizing devices according to frequency and targeting. So a high or a low frequency device. A high frequency device has a pulse, has a hertz over 1,000, and a low frequency device is under 1,000. Almost all the devices we use, I haven't found a single one that is high frequency. They're all low frequency, but there is a massive, massive difference between 2 to 5 hertz and 100 to 150 hertz. And those are usually where our devices are sitting.
Can I just ask about frequency, just for those people that are new to this? So like a low frequency compared to a high frequency, like the frequency depends on like how fast the pulse is being delivered, right? So if it's a 2 to 5 hertz, it's being delivered slower. The higher the hertz, the faster it's being delivered.
Yeah, and it's the wave that's like the wave output of the electromagnetic field, right? So the waveform is another question that we have, and that's like, is it a sinusoidal wave or is it a square box wave? What does that wave look like? The frequency refers to how short or long the wave is. So how many waves per second, for example.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. Now, hopefully I got that right.
I'm very quickly realizing I'm also not one of those people because
No.
I'm the same. Like it's so hard to actually understand all of these things because there's so many different parameters, and then also when you look at all the different modalities, everything's different. So again, I'm getting it.
And how they interact with each other, right? Like how do those different parameters interact with one another? Okay, so the high frequency or low frequency. Most of our devices are all of our devices are low frequency that I know of, because there are many devices, but all the ones I've been able to research are low frequency, and they're sitting between 2 and I've seen 150 hertz. Okay, there's a big difference between those 2 hertz ranges. Then the next way that we classify them is either as targeted or non-targeted. And this is not something that I knew. So we know we hear about targeted PEMF when we talk about Assisi loops. That's a targeted therapy. Targeted refers to the waveform that the device uses and what that waveform modulates. A targeted waveform will modulate a specific cellular process or a specific biological function. So Assisi is targeted because it targets inflammation and pain pathways, right, with that specific waveform. One of our first PEMF devices are bone growth stimulators. Those are targeted because they stimulate bone growth. That is their function and their purpose. Again, most of the devices that we use are non-targeted because they use waveforms that are, they have a broader function, right? They're supposed to modulate and stimulate different pathways, many different pathways, not just restricting to 1 or 2 things. They're supposed to have these broad effects, and that makes them non-targeted devices. So I really needed to go into what is each device doing, where are its parameters sitting, so that I could understand how this classification works. And so simply, CCs are targeted. That's one of our most commonly used ones, and we use it for a specific purpose. And things like beamer and response systems, those are non-targeted. I have also seen some people talk about targeted and non-targeted as like a local treatment point. So again, a CC you're applying to a local point, whereas a blanket or a mat is treating the whole body. But this article by Gaynor is specifically talking about targeted in relation to the waveform and then which functions it modulates. Does that help?
That's helpful. Yeah, really, really helpful. It's just you
Yeah.
can sort of put them in two different areas. When you were talking about parameters, I wanted to just like go into those again, just even for me, just to get for the understanding, right? So when you talk about the intensity, then we're talking about like the Gauss, all right?
Yes. Or
So that's
the
like
micro Teslas.
Tesla, yeah. Yeah. So how
Hmm.
strong the electromagnetic field is, basically. Now,
Yes.
this is one of the tricky things because a lot of magnetic products, and we can even go into like some of the like magnetic boots and things like that, which are
Hmm.
static magnets, not even PMF. The Gauss is never really shared. So did you find in any of your research to actually know what the Gauss is? Because yeah, I've got a beamer and I've also got response system boots, and I've had the response system horse blanket too. But if you had to ask me now what the Gauss is, what the intensity when I was treating patients, whether they be a horse, a dog, whatever, I can't tell you. I don't actually know what the strength of what the Gauss was when I'm using those machines.
Yes. So the more recent articles report the parameters of the machine that they're using, which is really nice. And that's really what I'd love to see more of so that we can compare apples to apples. If we're talking about, a randomized double-blind placebo-controlled trial looking at OA, I actually want to know what device they used. I know that's not necessarily relevant, but I think right now our devices are so different on the market that I do want to know which device was used in the research. And then what was that micro Tesla output? What was the time of application? Because that is really important, but all of the parameters. And most of them don't report the wave form, which we know is important because that tells us whether or not we're like which cellular processes are we going to be targeting with this waveform. So most of them don't report on the waveform, but for example, Sutela et al. 2025, they used a beamer device between 100 and 150 microtesla, and that intensity they were able to adjust weekly. So they started with 22 microtesla in week 1, and then 44 in week 2, 60 from week 3 to 6. So they were able to adjust the microtesla of that. And then others, I mean, we have PEMF reported in another OA study as 50 hertz, 40 Gauss, 30 minutes a session, twice weekly for 5 weeks. But again, no waveform. And another one that did this, 50 hertz, 100 Gauss, 30 minutes. So they are starting to report those things, and I like that because otherwise we're comparing apples to oranges when we read the research.
Yeah, I mean,
Did
one
that
of the
answer
things,
your question?
yeah, it does, it does. But like I just think about people that have got these devices, like one of the things I see is in our world today,
Mm.
companies are trying to make things easier for us, right? For everyone, no matter what industry you're in. Like, make it as easy as possible for someone to use your device. And as much as actually I appreciate that, because I'm that person, I like to have whatever is the easiest and quickest and I can use. I worry that in trying to make some of these modalities easy to use, that we actually it removes us having to question what we're doing. So for example, if there is a setting that's just setting 1, 2, and 3 on a device, and then you can do it for 2 minutes, 10 minutes, or 20 minutes,
Mm,
am I thinking, what actual biological process that I'm actually trying to treat here? Am I going through that process of thought and then choosing what I'm doing around that? Because the easier we make it, the less
mm,
it makes us as rehab therapists to question things, to question what we're treating
mm,
it, what's the biological process, is actually what we're doing going to have that effect?
mm. Yeah, I think, and that is especially relevant with PMF because what is it? It's a mat. We press the button, we put it on, we carry on with our treatments, right? Like it couldn't be less involved or simpler for us to use this modality. And I have really been trying to find the parameters for individual devices. Where are they sitting? What are they using? It's really hard. They're not reporting these things on their website. I don't know if they are reporting them in like the owner's manual when they sell a device. Maybe they are, but I haven't seen one that really does. I have found the parameters for specific devices when those devices have been used in research publications. In a research project, then the researchers will report on the parameters that the device used. And so that has been how I've been collecting information on individual device parameters, which I think is really weird. I could probably also reach out to the companies to get information, but I haven't done that.
I think they've shared it because maybe there's a
I
reason,
don't know.
maybe they don't want the other companies to know what their secret formula is. You know what I mean? I don't know.
Well, that is definitely true for, well, I say definitely, but I believe that is true for Beamer. They have a patented waveform that they use. And so the waveform that they use is definitely not available. And I haven't seen anything reporting on that other than it is a proprietary patented waveform. Um, and what does that do? I don't know. What does this specific waveform do? Does that make it targeted? Does it not make it like what are we talking about here? And then that's exactly why again I'm like, well, if a beamer is used in a research article, I want to know that the beamer was used because it is different from a different PEMF device. How is it different? I don't know because they're not reporting that, but I know they're different.
Yeah, I mean, so as the vet rehabber, like I want to
Mm,
now buy a PMF device. Let me go and have a look at the
mm.
research. And this is actually what you're saying. It's like, let me go see the research. And then you find research and you think, wow, that's great. But we're not comparing apples with apples. So we don't know.
Yes.
When we go buy one, is it the same as the research? And that's the problem that we say.
Yes. That's a problem. That's a
Yeah.
big problem. Yeah. And a lot of the PMF companies, they do have a research section on their website, but the research is human research or PMF research, not specific to their device. And again, I can't say that's true for all of them, but the ones that I've managed to look at haven't been research articles that their device specifically has been used in. And I want to see what this device has been used for before I decide that that's the one I'm going to buy for this reason, for this exact reason. The parameters do differ. And unless I can control the parameters of the device, if I'm just going to be clicking a button, I really do want to know what it is we're doing. And even saying that, we really don't have the research to be able to specifically say that these parameters are effective for this condition and these parameters are effective for that condition. And so this is how we're going to adjust our parameters for this condition versus that condition. We don't have that literature that I'm able to pinpoint yet. So there are still lots of questions.
Yeah, I think it is a bit of a thumb suck. I mean, I think when I've used them, for me, it's mainly actually the response that I get from my patient. The horses, you put it on, if they seem to tolerate it and they're good, then you leave it at that. If they don't, they're like a bit twitchy and they're moving a bit, then I decrease it if I'm able to. So if I'm able to, if the device allows you to be able to do that. So yeah, all right. Well, that's something that hopefully someone is going to solve for us. Maybe someone will listen to this podcast and they'll be like, from now on, we will state when research has been done using our device. Let's dive into.
No, maybe some clever person is listening to this and going, "Oh my gosh, Anne, you only have 1% of the information. Let me help educate you here. Please send an email so that we can be educated because I realize I only have such a small amount of information here. But I'm very interested in understanding this better."
Let's dive into what the research says. So, like, what are the things that, as vet rehabbers, like, we can actually treat that we sort of know that there is some research behind it?
Okay. Okay, so if we let's just focus on, there's a lot of research. So I don't want to deep dive into all the different articles, but I think it's worth looking at a few areas. So there's research on post-operative IVDD in canines. I've found two decent articles, one by Alvarez in 2019 and the other one by Zidal et al. In 2018. And if we look at the more recent one, the Alvarez paper, and we know Alvarez, and we love her research, so that's fantastic. They looked at acute IVDD requiring a hemilaminectomy. They had a standardized surgical group. They looked at pain scores, neurological grading, and then wound healing over a 6-week period of time, if I remember right, but I could be wrong with that now. They used an CC loop, so that's targeted PEMF. Yes.
No, I was going to ask you, did they specify what the
Yes.
device was? Yeah. If they did, tell
Yeah.
us.
Yeah, so for both these research articles, they used an CC loop, and I quite like the way that they were able to do this treatment because essentially you can take the loop. The one article had like the Zidal et al. Article had like a little suit on the dogs, and then the loop was taped onto the suit. And then it had a pre-programmed treatment time, so it was off for 2 hours and then on for 15 minutes in the Zidal paper. So they had treatments every 2 hours on those dogs, and the dogs just wore the CC loop over their back because you could tape it, you could Velcro it onto the little jacket that they wore. In the Alvarez paper, they had it on twice a day in the beginning, and then once a day 3 times a day, and then twice a day as the dogs progressed through healing. And they did report the parameters of the ACC, which is 27.12 megahertz with a 2 millisecond pulse duration at 2 hertz and a peak induced magnetic field of 4 microtesla. So again, that's very small microtesla number. If we think we've seen 150 in other devices, what is the right microtesla? What should we be aiming for? Is more better? Is less better? It's a good question. Okay, so what I found really significant in the Alvarez study is, number one, they had a sample size of 53 dogs. That's not a small sample size. If we think about the literature that we have just in general in our field, that's a decent sample size. But they also did a power analysis, and that showed that for their pain scores and for their time to ambulation outcome measures, they would have needed 152 patients and 82 patients to reach a power that would give them statistical significance. So those outcome measures that they found in pain scores and in time to ambulation, they're not significant. They give us information, but they're not statistically significant to be able to take out to the patient population, right? And that's important to read and to hear, not because we want to throw out the results, but because we want to be able to say, okay, well, in the study, we didn't reach statistical power. I think that's the right terminology. But okay, your next question is about their results, because of course that's what we want to know. And PEMF improved wound healing at week 6 and resulted in less pain medication administered at home. So those are both great things, right? Like these dogs had, their owners gave them less opioids because they had less need for them, and that's pretty significant. And they rejected the hypothesis that PEMF yields a faster time to ambulation or improved pain scores at any of the selected time points. Okay, so then remembering that we didn't have power for those outcome measures. And in the other study, which was also acute IVDD, non-ambulatory, they all had surgery, so it was a post-operative program. Their treatment parameters were a little bit different because they did 15 minutes of treatment every 2 hours for 2 weeks, and then twice a day for 4 weeks after that, so 6 weeks treatment. They concluded that targeted PEMF reduced incisional pain over a 6-week period, and the beneficial effect on proprioceptive placing should be interpreted with caution because of the small number of animals. They had 16 animals in this study. So there were improvements in proprioceptive placing, but we're going to just interpret that with caution. So what do we say from those results? Nothing really.
But saying that, I mean, if you think about the CC loop and what they're advertising it and marketing it for, it did achieve all those things.
Yeah,
I mean,
reduction in
they're not
pain
saying
and
the CC loop is going to
inflammation.
help get dogs to walk faster, and they're
Yeah,
saying it's inflammation and the pain
and
associated
pain.
with it. Yeah, so it did everything
It
that
did
they
those
say.
things.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So no, I'm definitely not trying to say, hey, this isn't working. I just want us to read the research,
Mm.
and then interpret it accurately. Not looking for, we're going to carry a positive bias when we're reading research. We want to see that our devices are working, that they're having the effect that we want them to have. Be aware of things like a power analysis. That's important. And
Yeah,
then
you
we have
told me
some,
something new. I didn't know about that. I
yeah.
didn't even know the terminology, power analysis.
I don't like reading the statistics section. I usually just skim over it and avoid it, but I've been needing to pay more attention to that lately, and apparently some things are coming out like this. So there we go.
I want you to
Um,
chat. You mentioned something about bias, and this
mm,
sort of ties into that. One of the things when you use PMF devices, so like, and I can give you some horse examples and some dog examples. I've actually even got a cat example. So I had a beamer mat, and I used to have this cat that used to come, and I used to treat it as a Siamese cat, and it was the cutest thing. Like literally, you would put the beamer on, and it would purr. And the owner and I used to take great joy in switching the beamer off, and it would stop purring and give us a look, and then we'd switch it on again, and it would start purring, and we'd laugh. It was like literally we did it every single session. It was like our joke with the cat, the poor cat. But I mean, clearly there, it's showing that whatever it's getting from the PMF, there is the body feels it and the cat feels it. So that was
mm,
one example. And then just obviously also other dogs that I've treated just completely relaxing, like really
mm,
tense dogs that suddenly can just relax, and will just lie down and go to sleep. And they come into your consult room. I used to treat on the floor. They'd come in and they'd just automatically go to the mat and lie down. They just know this is where I want to be. And then the other thing is obviously with the horses, often when using PMF, you see them yawning, and they do that
mm,
sort of yawning. And I've heard other horse owners say, oh no, PMF doesn't work with my horse. One of the other horses at the stables it does because it yawns, and so there's this owner perception, right? That if the horse doesn't yawn or whatever when it's being treated, then it's not working. If the dog doesn't relax on the thing, then it's not working. Which obviously is not necessarily true. But I just thought it's something that we could bring up and have a little chat about.
yeah. Oh, yeah, that is interesting. And what do we do with that ultimately? That's that we observe our patients and we work accordingly.
Yeah, I think it's about communication. So I think if you're a therapist and you've got one of these devices, from the very beginning. They can yawn, they can relax. If they don't, doesn't mean that the device is not working, you know. So I think it's about communicating with them. But I think there's the owner bias for me. That's really what I was getting to. It's like the owner thinks, you know, and it's the same with physio treatments, right? You know, they see the yawn and they're like, oh, okay, money well spent. Like the horses reacting, this is all good.
And it really is like that with all of our stuff. Whatever we're using, whether it's our hands or a device, there is that perception that the owners have. That's something that we've perpetuated in the industry, honestly. I think we've created that. It's not their fault.
That's what we share, right? We share, we share on
like,
social
oh,
media.
Look, it's working.
Yeah, exactly.
Why do we do that?
Partly our fault. All right, what's the next?
Okay.
The next lot of research we're gonna dive into.
You were talking about you triggered a thought for me with the Assisi specifically. Okay, if we're looking at the research articles and we're thinking, and I've been looking for the devices specifically, and I want to see how the companies are involved, because obviously, if you're doing research and then a company supplying you with the devices, then how are they impacting that as well? Because there could be bias there as well. So I'm really impressed with Assisi and how they get involved in research, right? They supply devices that are placebo devices and then treatment devices, and they help with the blinding, not in an active way, not in a like interfering with the research way, but in a way that allows the blinding to happen off-site, right? Because they create devices that are placebo and then devices that are active, and then send it to the researchers with their barcode, like with the specific barcodes for the devices, and then the blind, like the groups are allocated and the dogs are put into whichever group, and they get whichever devices, and then that at the end of the day can be brought in, you know, who was in the treatment and who was in the placebo group, but the researchers don't know, and the owners don't know. And so I really love that. Like, that must cost them a great deal of money to be able to do that. If we think about how many patients have been in just these two studies that Assisi's supplied devices for, I think that's really impressive. That leaves me with a positive feeling towards Assisi. They're not involved in the data collection, in the processing, in the design of the study. They supply the devices that are blinded. I think that's powerful. I like that. I want to see more companies doing that. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I agree.
So should we go back to some research articles? Because the other area where we're seeing some new articles published is in arthritis, in canine arthritis, with a focus on the hips, obviously, but also just like any joint that has arthritis. And I think there are three, so 2 2025 studies and 1 2026 study. The 26 study, I'm going to do a research refresh on, because for this conversation, it tells us little, because they didn't isolate PEMF treatment as they didn't isolate PEMF as a treatment intervention. They did PEMF in combination with laser, and then compared that to a Librela group. So we have a Librela group and then a Librela plus PEMF plus laser group. So we're going to go into that in a research refresh, because I think that's interesting and worth looking at. And then we have 225 studies that are both randomized, double-blind, placebo-controlled clinical trials looking at osteoarthritis, focusing on pain scores, so Helsinki Pain Index, the Lloyd scoring, what is the other one? CBPI. Sorry, I had Helsinki stuck in my head and then couldn't get to the CBPI. All of those things. And these were good studies. They also were prospective clinical trials. Those are good ones for us to have with control groups. And this is the first different device that I came across. Globus has a PEMF device. And again, it allows a bit of control over the parameters, which I like. So one of the 25 studies was with the Globus device that ran at 50 hertz, 40 Gauss for 30 minutes per session, twice weekly for 5 weeks. But again, we don't have any reporting on the wave form, and we know that's important. That's something to consider. And there were some improvements. So both papers showed improvements. The one using a Beamer device showed improvements in symmetry indexes so they did gait analysis on a zebra's treadmill, and their symmetry indexes were approaching 0 by the end of the study period, but they had no changes in Lloyd scoring, with Lloyd being the owner questionnaire that they used. I think that CBPI, or the Helsinki Pain Index, would have given them a better score to use in the study. So that's something to consider. And they also did 2 daily treatments, 2 8-minute treatments for 6 weeks, which I think is a lot if we're thinking about arthritis and owners in practice. And the second study did, I actually don't know how long they did that study for, but both were 20 patients. This is Levi. This is my little person. He's joining us for the rest of this interview. So in these 2 studies, we do see positive changes. They're not massive, but I think they point us in a positive direction that I feel good about. So for example, there was no difference in Lloyd scoring in the one paper, but I think that CBPI, or the Helsinki Pain Index, would be a little bit more sensitive to changes in this kind of group. So I think they could have switched that around. They have had improvements in gait symmetry indexes measured on the zebra's treadmill. That's really positive. So over a 6-week period, we saw improvements in the symmetry of the gait. I like that. That's relevant for us. In the other study, they saw significant pain reduction from the first session, with CBPI scores improving markedly, which again is great. Mechanical nociceptive measures showed improved pain tolerance. Range of motion and thigh circumference had no changes in either the control or the treatment group. So the PEMF group did show higher mechanical nociceptive thresholds, lower pain scores across all the evaluated time points in the Cool et al. 2025 paper. And that does suggest that PEMF is safe, non-invasive, and effective to alleviate chronic pain in dogs with hip OA. So good evidence, ultimately. Both randomized clinical trials looking at PEMF as a standalone compared to a placebo group. They had 20 dogs in one and 21 dogs in the other. So they're still small, but the one did a power calculation and determined that they needed 10 dogs per group. So that is statistically significant, and that is information that we can use. So yeah, I like that.
And also those studies were done on non-targeted PEMF.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So showing that, the targeted also had good results with regards to that, and the non-targeted as well.
Yeah. So definitely we shouldn't be limiting ourselves to just seeking targeted devices. The non-targeted devices are having a good effect. We just need to figure out which waveforms we want to aim for now. And I think those studies go hand in hand with mechanism of action studies as well. Because if we're saying that we're stimulating a specific biological function or pathway, we need to be able to show which biological function / pathway we're targeting, so that we can then get to the why, and then from there to the clinical studies.
One of the areas where like you hear so much research, and I think there's a lot of evidence in the human field, is with bone. So bone healing and non-healing fractures. Did you find any research in animals around that?
I did not look at that. The bone growth stimulator space is like a whole other space. And for me, I wonder how relevant it is to us. I do think that it is relevant. There are non-union fractures. There are, like femur fractures and things in puppies that we might want to use PEMF for. But specifically, like the bone growth stimulator applications, you're talking about applying PMF for 24 hours a day kind of thing for many days consecutively. And so that I think is difficult to translate into our clinical practice, not impossible for something like a non-union fracture, where a dog would already be on crate rest, or maybe we're thinking about complicated fractures in horses where they've had surgical stabilization. That is something that's happening more and more. So yes, I think there's a space for it, but I don't know anything about it.
Yeah, I mean, when I think about PMF, just our conversations is just reminding me of cases. I just keep having these cases that come up. Um, and I think one of the things is obviously we have the targeted and then the non-targeted. And the non-targeted, they're stimulating multiple biological processes, because we don't have that one waveform. But I mean, I remember this one case that I had. It was a Rottweiler, very aggressive. And it came in actually, it was a femoral head amputation and it was non-weight bearing. It was not putting any weight. It was like three-legged lame. And it came in for a consultation, the first consultation. And it was a long one. I remember we spoke for like an hour and a half. And in that time, I put it on the beamer mat. And because I couldn't get near the dog. I literally couldn't examine it. It wanted to eat me. It was very, very aggressive. And we tried to get the owner out, and it was just impossible to examine. But the strangest thing happened. Like, what I used to do with my consults is the next day, one of my team would call the owner and just find out like how the dog is, and even though I didn't treat, the team still did that. And the owner was just amazed. She was like, "My dog's walking. He's putting his leg down. He's weight bearing. He's walking. Like whatever you did." And in those situations, obviously, the only thing I did do was put it on the PMF mat because I couldn't treat it. I couldn't do anything. So these kind of things just, yeah, these memories are being triggered of mine. And there's obviously, I think a lot of vet rehab therapists, because PMF is so difficult with all the different parameters to prove, and we know when things work and when they don't. So it might be anecdotal, but we know. Do you know what I mean? There are cases that we have where you're like, wow, like normally in those kind of situations, it would take this long for this to get better, and it's like half the time. This animal has like healed really well and much quicker, and is yeah. So as much as there is all this research out, I guess sometimes we also just have to make decisions for ourselves, right? And what works for us. Because right now, as we go through all of this, despite you doing all this deep research, we still don't have the answers.
No.
But the one thing we're very lucky with PMF is, I think in your research, you said that there was no known side effects, right? So
Yeah, no,
obviously,
I haven't come across any reported side effects anywhere. That's like a consistent thing that comes through in the research, no side effects.
yeah, which fits in with our do no harm. So
Yeah.
okay, so is there anything else that's come up in the research that we should be keeping an eye on?
Oh, yes. I think the space of like behavioral issues or behavioral things or challenges. So things like anxiety or stress or fear responses in dogs, or those are significant. Those impact life for many dogs and for many horses. And there is some research coming out in that area. They are exploring it. Does seem to be a space where PMF might be valuable. We know that the CC has a Karma Canine, I think it's called. So they're really looking into that space. But that's something I think we should keep our eyes on as well. Is this a modality that we can use to help dogs that have dysregulated responses, behavioral responses?
Yeah, I like it. I also hear in the equine world of people
Mm,
using PEP to relax their horses,
mm.
especially after traveling or at shows and things like that.
Yeah, I think it would be very relevant for our equine competitive population if
Mm.
we could help them with travel stress, recovery of, the stress component of travel and competition is a big one that we need to help them with.
Love it. Well, that was a great deep dive. I've learned loads. And it's also just so nice for me just to get an understanding again, just a reframe of everything, sort of where we're at, what we still need, like what research still needs to be done. And for me, I think, just to feel like what I'm doing when I'm using my PMF, that it is safe, it is having effects. Yes, we don't know sometimes exactly what and how, but we're doing no harm, it is helping. And there is more and more studies coming through. And hopefully we can just hope for more research to come through that is just a little bit more, helps us understand it a little bit more, and all the things that you mentioned, the waveforms and the devices, so that we can know.
Exactly. Yeah, it would be great if companies become more open and forthcoming about the parameters so that we can start making clinical decisions around those parameters.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
Thank you.
Thanks for your time. Bye.
Bye.
If you enjoyed this podcast, please hit the subscribe button so you get notified every time I load a new podcast. I'm here every week talking to vet rehab therapists from all over the world about all things vet rehab. A big thanks to our sponsor, Paul Prosper. Their sponsorship allows us to be able to give this podcast to you for free. So go and check them out at paulprosper.com. And also don't forget to bookmark the next Vet Rehab Summit on Saturday, the 14th of November, 2026. Come and be a part of the world's largest online veterinary rehabilitation conference created specifically for you, the vet rehabber community. Onlinepethealth members get VIP complimentary access to the Vet Rehab Summit. For more information about continuing education for vet rehabbers, you can go to onlinepethealth.com.